This freshly updated Warlock Stasis build makes you the master of ice turrets. With this build updated for Season of Defiance, with the new buildcrafting changes introduced with Lightfall, you'll be able to run around in all types of content, spamming as many stasis turrets down as you possibly can. Now, unlike a lot of builds, this is one that you kinda don't want to use in easy content. You want to run this thing in Master and Grandmaster content, because the way it works, we'll be slowing and freezing everything around us, and chaining between our abilities, our aspects, our fragments and our mods, we'll be able to have infinite stasis energy as long as you use the build the way it's supposed to be used. Now, I don't mean run around constantly throwing turrets down one after another. Now, although you can do that, kinda, it's also not what you should be doing. You want to ideally limit yourself to around 3 turrets at a time before throwing more down, because you just don't need to go crazy with the amount of turrets. Now, last season this build would usually slow you down more than it would help you with the interaction with stunning champions, which would actually unstun them, but now it actually works amazingly. In fact, you don't even need to stun overloads, the turrets will do that for you with its slow effects. So they'll get slowed, then stunned, and then they'll freeze, and then shatter, and then get slowed and stunned again, and that process just loops on repeat. It's actually kind of funny to watch, but honestly, this is a build you 100% want to have in your top 10 custom loadouts. So guys, if you like this one, then a rating is much appreciated, and be sure to subscribe if you want to see more amazing builds like this one. But now, as always, let's get right into it. Now, firstly, as always, I will mention that if you do like this build and you want to see more top builds like this one for Season 20 during Lightfall, then you can find the full collection of builds in the playlist, which is linked down below. And you guys should check that out because you might just find your new best build. But with this one today, this is your freshly updated Stasis build for the Warlock that gives you pretty much infinite Stasis turrets to use, which will slow and freeze enemies all the time in PvE activities. Now, you can use the grenade itself or just throw down turrets. I actually recommend you use the grenade ability because we'll be taking advantage of a perk that's going to almost fully refill our grenade when we freeze enemies. Now, a quick example of how you'll use this build in all types of content is you'll first start by ideally getting an orb of power. It's not required, but it will help you because that orb will give us armor charge stacks. You'll then hold to charge your grenade and then just throw it. This will pull out a stasis turret that will slow and freeze enemies. You'll then throw a grenade to freeze ads immediately, which will give you that grenade energy straight back. In most cases, instantly recharging the one we just threw and giving you extra energy for the first charge that you used earlier. Then you'll just go around looping between those. Most of the time you'll have no issues with maintaining at least 1 to 3 turrets up consistently all the time, especially in endgame content where you're constantly slowing and freezing things, because this is what is helping us get that grenade energy back. But also just in general making endgame content easier because nothing is moving, everything is just staying frozen. But there are so many benefits we're getting with this build, it's just great. So we'll be using the Osmiomancy Gloves, the exotic arms, and the reason for that is because our cold snap grenades will have an additional charge that recharges quicker on direct impact, and that seeker spawn from the grenade travels further. So you'll basically throw down a stasis turret using the first grenade charge, then you'll use the second charge to freeze enemies with the actual grenade itself, and that will give us grenade energy. And then that combined with a bunch of other things is what allows us to keep chaining between the grenade and the turret on a loop. But the majority of times you can just throw the turret down instead if you kinda don't want to mess around with using a grenade charge, because in some rare cases if you miss with that grenade then you're gonna kinda screw yourself over, as you'll have to wait for that grenade to recharge on its own. It's happened to me a few times, so I prefer to just use the turrets instead. Now, the alternative option is to use I Have Another Weld. This will just buff your ability regen by a +30, which stacks on top of tier 10 stats. So if you got 100 discipline, it'll stack, making your grenade recharge even faster. Both exotics are good choices, but if you're going with the Osmiomancy Gloves, you want to make sure that you're running a cold snap grenade. If you're running any other exotic, I'd probably go with a Duskfield. The cooldown won't actually matter because of our aspect Bleak Watcher, which has a base cooldown of 2.5 minutes. So pressing and holding the grenade will convert it into a stasis turret that fires slowing projectiles at nearby targets. And this thing will eventually freeze those enemies, stunning overloads and also stunning unstoppables if they get shattered by the freezing effects or near enemies that get shattered. A really good aspect. But the second one we have is the Frost Pulse. It doesn't actually matter what you use for the second aspect, but I do prefer this one as casting a rift will freeze nearby enemies as well. And this is nice because we're using the build with the new Verglas curve exotic bow, where final blows with the weapon grant stasis arrows, and then that next hip fire shot will fire them out, creating a stasis wall or stasis crystal, whatever you want to call it, which we can then shatter and get more grenade energy. Now, since that exotic bow is going to be our only source of creating stasis crystals, we'll want to shatter them when paired with our first fragment, the Whisper of Shards. So this will give us a +10 to resilience, but also increase our grenade recharge rate when we shatter Stasis Crystals, which is why this exotic is a great pair with this build. You can use other exotics that have interactions with Stasis, but I thought this bow was by far one of the best ones to use, and also one of the most fun ones to use as well. Now other fragments we're running are Whisper of Refraction, so that defeating slowed or frozen targets grants us class ability energy for our Rift, Whisper of Torment, so we get grenade energy when we take damage from targets, and then lastly Whisper of Chains, so that we take reduced damage when being near those Stasis Crystals we create, which will be from our bow. Now we're not really getting many benefits from the artifact this season, which means this build is perfect for any season regardless of what seasonal perks there are available. The only thing we're really making use of is the Overload bow to get overload rounds, but again that doesn't even matter as we have slow effects to stun overloads, and everything is going to be frozen regardless anyway with this build. For the mods, there's quite a few things going on. Firstly, we have stacks on stacks in the legs so that we get extra armor charge stacks when picking up orbs. Then we'll generate those orbs using the Harmonic Cipher mod. This will mean that multi-kills with our bow, which is Stasis, will create orbs of power. This might be a little tricky to achieve in things like a GM, but with allies on your team, they'll be contributing to orb generation anyway. So we'll use those orbs on firstly Innovation to reduce our grenade cooldown when picking one up, but also 3 grenade kickstart mods in the arms, which will give us up to half of our grenade energy straight back when we use it, which now also works with 2 grenade charges unlike last season. So it's one of my favourite mods to use this season, and I use these with almost every grenade build now. The only other mods we're using which aren't required are a dynamo in the helmet, damage resist mods in the chest, and then a distribution and 2 bomber mods in the class armor, which we'll use with our Rift just so that we can get that grenade a little bit quicker. Now this is what the artifact setup looks like if you want to directly copy it, but as I said, it doesn't make much of a difference, so it's fine to use whatever you want. Then this here is the mod screen, but I'll leave a dim link down below for you guys so that you can quickly set up this build to be in one of your 10 loadouts. The only other things I recommend you have for this build are a minimum of having your grenade stat to 100 so that you get it back quicker, and have your recovery as high as possible as well, again ideally tier 10. And then if you can on top of this, try and get resilience up 2 for the extra damage resist. I know everything is going to be frozen around you, but for those ads shooting you at a distance, they will still hurt. Now overall I do like this build, and it has to be one of my best and go-to builds when playing endgame content, especially with a team and things like a GM, or when playing solo. And if or when the solo Starfire build finally gets nerfed, I can almost guarantee that this build will be the go-to for endgame PvE in Destiny 2 Lightfall when it comes to having some of the best builds available for the Warlock. So I strongly recommend setting this one up ready so that you have it for when that time does eventually come. But guys, if you did like this one or found it useful, then be sure to leave a rating, comment what builds you're using down below, and perhaps check out my new Season 20 class build playlist so that you can stay up to date with some of the best builds available to use in Destiny 2 Lightfall Season of Defiance. But for now guys, give this one a try, and I'll see you all very soon for the next build. Peace out guys.